I don't think most of us wake up in the morning and decide, today I am going to waste my money. We don't make a plan to spend more than we should. We don't sit down and say, let's make sure I have nothing left at the end of this month. And yet somehow it happens. You get paid, you pay your bills, you buy a few things, you go out with friends. Maybe you order something you have been wanting. Maybe you tell yourself it's not that expensive. And then a few weeks later, you look at your bank account and think, where did all my money go? I have had that feeling more than I'd like to admit. And the frustrating part is that I usually know better. I know I should save more. I know I shouldn't buy certain things. I know that little purchase add up. So why do I keep doing it? And maybe you have asked yourself the same question. Why is it so difficult to stop spending money, even when we know we are spending too much? I wanted to understand that. So I started looking into what financial experts, psychologists, and even the Bible have to say about why we spend the way we do. And what I found made me realize that maybe the problem isn't simply I don't know how to manage money. Maybe there is something deeper going on. Because here is what's interesting. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau actually studied how people manage their spending, and they found that people generally want to manage their spending, but they don't always follow through when they are actually making a purchase. In other words, knowing that you should spend less doesn't necessarily mean you are going to spend less. And honestly, that makes sense because nobody pulls out their budget spreadsheet in the middle of the store and say, let me just check whether this $30 purchase aligns with my long-term financial goals. At least I don't. Usually, there is much simpler conversation having in our heads. And I have noticed that there are 4 sentences I tell myself over and over again. The first one is, I deserve it. You had a long week, you worked hard, maybe you just got paid. Maybe you have been responsible with your money for the last 2 weeks. And then you see something you want and you think, come on, I deserve this. And sometimes you probably do. There's nothing wrong with enjoying something that you have worked for. There's nothing wrong with going out for dinner. There's nothing wrong with buying something you have wanted for a while. The problem starts when I deserve it becomes a justification for everything I want. Because sometimes I deserve it isn't about a $20 purchase. Sometimes it's a car. You find a car you really like and you look at the price and you think, there's no way I can afford that. But when you see the monthly payment, maybe it's $450 a month, and suddenly the question changes. Instead of asking, can I afford this car? You're asking, can I afford $450 a month? And those are 2 very different questions. Look what Dave Ramsey says.
If you deserved it, you would have had the money to pay for it. You don't deserve $450 car payments. You're not that bad a guy.
Yeah.
You don't deserve hell, okay? So I'm not going to, no. You know you deserve something when you have saved the money and you pay for it. Until then, you don't deserve it. That's a childish statement. And if you repeat that statement over and over, you're going to be broke your whole life.
And that's what makes this mentality so dangerous. We can take something that might be financially irresponsible and make it feel completely reasonable just by breaking it into a monthly payment. $450 doesn't feel like $27,000. $100 a month doesn't feel like $1,200 a year. And $50 doesn't feel like much at all. But your bank account doesn't care how small the payment feels. The money still leaves, and I think that's something I have to learn myself. Sometimes the question isn't, do I deserve this? Maybe the better question is this actually wise? Because I can deserve something and still not be able to afford it. I can want something and still need to wait for it. And I can work hard without having to reward myself by spending everything I worked for. That's a hard lesson because delaying gratification isn't as exciting as getting what you want right now. But maybe that's a part of becoming better with money. Learning that just because I can have something doesn't mean I should have it. And honestly, I think that's where a lot of our spending starts. We don't necessarily tell ourselves, I want to be irresponsible with my money. We just give ourselves a reason why this particular purchase is okay. I worked hard, I deserve it, I can afford the payment, I'll make more money later. And sometimes the reason isn't even about us. Sometimes we want something simply because everyone else has it, which leads us to the excuse number 2, everyone else has it. I think this one is especially dangerous because you don't even realize it's happening. You might be completely happy with your phone. You've had it for 2 years, It works perfectly. There's nothing wrong with it. Then your friend gets a new one. Suddenly yours feel old. You're perfectly happy with your car. Then you start seeing people driving nicer cars around you. And somehow the car you were grateful for 6 months ago now feels like something you need to upgrade. And it doesn't have to be something expensive. Maybe it's clothes. Maybe it's a new laptop. Maybe it's eating at a certain restaurant. Maybe it's going on vacation. Maybe it's the kind of house you live in. You see someone else with something and suddenly you start asking yourself, why don't I have that? And I think that's one of the strangest thing about money. Sometimes we don't get dissatisfied because our situation got worse. We become dissatisfied because we see someone else's situation. And social media makes it incredibly easy. You can open Instagram or YouTube for 5 minutes and see someone with a better car, a nicer house, a better vacation, better clothes, a better setup, and you don't see their credit card bill. You don't see their mortgages, you don't see their debt, you don't see the years it took them to get there, you just see the finished product. And then you compare their highlight reel with your everyday life. Of course, you're going to feel behind. And I think this is where lifestyle inflation becomes dangerous. Because maybe you get a raise and instead of thinking, great, now I can save more, you start thinking, great, now I can afford things that I could not afford before. So your income goes up, but your spending goes up with it. And somehow you're making more money, but still feel like you're behind. I've actually started to realize that the problem isn't that I don't have enough. It's that I've convinced myself that I need more. And that's a very different problem. Because if my definition of enough keeps moving every time I get something new, I'm never going to reach it. I'll always be looking at somebody else. Somebody with better car, somebody with bigger house, somebody taking a better vacation, somebody making more money, and there will always be somebody ahead of me. That's why I think this is more than just a financial problem. It's a contentment problem. The Bible actually have pretty strong word for this kind of desire. Coveting. It's that feeling of looking at what someone else has and thinking, I want that too. And what's interesting in that is Bible doesn't just tell us to stop wanting things. It teaches us to learn contentment. Paul says in Philippians that he learned to be content whether he had plenty or whether he was in need. And I think that's a completely different way of looking at money. Because contentment never means you can never want anything. It means that your happiness doesn't depend upon getting the next thing. You can work hard, you can want a better car, you can want a bigger house, you can want to make more money. There's nothing inherently wrong with those things. But if I can't be thankful for what I have until I get what someone else has, then I am going to spend my entire life chasing somebody else's life. And that's the road I don't want to go down. But here's the thing, even when we know we should be content, we still find a way to justify the purchase. And sometimes that justification sounds like the excuse number 3. I'll worry about it later. Hey, if you think you are getting some value from my channel, please subscribe and like this video. Let's move on. I think this might be the sentence that gets us into the most trouble. Because there is something really convenient about tomorrow. Tomorrow doesn't have to deal with today's consequences. Today I get a new phone, tomorrow can worry about the credit card bill. Today I get the car, tomorrow can worry about the payments. Today I go on a trip, tomorrow can worry about how I am going to pay for it. And sometimes I'll worry about it later doesn't even involve debt. It's I'll start saving next month. I'll start budgeting when things calm down. I'll deal with my finances after I make more money. I'll pay it off when I get my next paycheck. And the problem is, later always sounds easier than now. It's easy to make a promise to your future self because future me isn't here yet. I can tell myself, future me will have more money, future me will be more disciplined, future me will figure it out, but eventually, future me becomes today. And now, I am the one dealing with the decisions I made months ago. I think that makes this especially obvious. That allows us to experience something before we have actually earned it. You want the car now, you want the phone now, you want the vacation now, you don't have enough money right now, but there is a solution. Borrow the money. And suddenly, the things that was not affordable becomes affordable. At least that's how it feels. Because instead of seeing the full price, you see the monthly payments. And that small payment make the decision feel harmless. But you are not making the payment disappear. You are just moving the consequence into the future. And this is where I think delayed gratification becomes such an important financial skill. Sometimes the most financially responsible thing you can say is, not yet. Not never, just not yet. I don't have the money for it right now. So I'll wait, I'll save, I'll work, and when I can finally afford it, I'll buy it. That sounds incredibly boring compared to just put it on the card. But there is something really freeing about not owing somebody money for something you already consumed. And again, I think this is one of the reasons Dave Ramsey talks so much about getting out of debt. You don't have to agree with every piece of financial advice Dave gives to understand the basic principle. Your future income matters. Every payment you commit to today is money your future self won't be able to use for something else. And that's what I think we forget. When I buy something with the money I don't have, I'm not just spending money, I'm spending future money. I'm making a decision for a version of myself who hasn't even gotten paid yet. And sometimes that version of me is going to be pretty annoyed. Because future me might want to save, future me might want to invest, future me might want to give, future me might have an emergency, future me might have a family to take care of. But I have already promised that money to something I wanted today. And this is where I think Bible's teaching on wisdom becomes really practical. Proverbs repeatedly praises the person who thinks ahead. Proverb 21:15 says, "Plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty." There is a contrast there that I think is really interesting. Diligence plans ahead, haste wants it now. And that's not just a financial principle, it's a character principle. Because sometimes the problem isn't that I don't have enough money. The problem is that I want the reward now. I don't want to wait, I don't want to save, I don't want to sacrifice, I don't want to say no, I want what I want. And I want it today. And that's why I think learning to handle money well has very little to do with becoming obsessed with money. It has a lot more to do with self-control. But there is still one more way we convince ourselves that our spending isn't really a problem. And this one sounds almost harmless. We look at the price and say, it's only $20. This one sounds harmless. And that's exactly why it's dangerous. Because you're not gonna ruin your finances with one $20 purchase. That's not the point. It's the fact that $20 doesn't feel like enough money to matter. You get coffee, it's only $5. You order food, it's only $15. You buy something, it's only $20. You do it again next week, and again, and again. And eventually, you look at your bank account and realize that all those little purchases you think didn't mattered. And I am not saying you should never spend $20. Please don't turn this video about never buying coffee. Because if I don't pay attention to small decisions, I can easily end up making a very big financial decision without ever making one big purchase. And that's why I think these 4 sentences have in common. I deserve it, everyone else has it, I'll worry about it later, it's only $20. None of them sounds crazy. That's why they are so effective. There are little justifications, and sometimes the problem with our finances isn't one terrible decision. It's hundreds of tiny decisions that all made sense in the moment. And that's why maybe simply making a budget isn't enough. We don't just need to know where our money should go. We need to understand why we want to send it somewhere else. Because money isn't about numbers. It reveals what we value. Jesus said, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." And I think that's something I need to remember. The goal isn't to become someone who never spends money. The goal isn't even to become rich. I think goal is to become the kind of person who can look at the money and say, I control this. This doesn't control me. I'm still working on that myself. But I guess that's what this channel is about. Getting a little better with money. Getting a little more disciplined. Learning to be content. And hopefully becoming a better steward of whatever God gives us. Because we are all on a road somewhere. This is my road to success.